Hi everybody, I'm Kate Foggo and this is Julie Hiett, and we are making light. And today we're going to let Julie, shall we say, share her experiences. Anyone who's been following along will know that we've done quite a lot of work around anger over the last few weeks. And what we're going to discuss in this session is how you can take that anger, harness that anger for, shall we say, evolution. We're going to try and stay away from good and bad. So we'll just call it evolution. Does that just about wrap it up, Julie?
I think so, yeah. It's a good place to start, because when we were just kind of talking beforehand. I don't really have it all formulated either, but I've been reading some things of late that I thought were interesting and thought maybe I would share. We'll see. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So, for everybody's sake, so as Kate said, we've been working through our own anger and how do we deal with anger. And for me in particular, it's even one, recognize that I have anger. Two, realizing that it's not bad to have anger. Like, that's been huge for me. And so I'm kind of in the third-ish phase. Like, I know I have anger. Now, what do I do with it? How do I express it? Do I express, like, all the things? What does it all mean? So there's all that. Then the other part for me is I have been learning more and more about, at this point, Christian mystics. So Teresa of Avila, I think is her name, Hildegard of Bingen, Thomas Aquinas, St. Francis of Assisi, these, and this, the way to some degree Christianity was before the bubonic plague, but that's a different topic. These people, however, these people approached Christianity more in an integrated way and based in nature kind of a way that appeals to me. And of late, I have been following a professor of the mystics, and his name is Matthew Fox. And many of people that watch the show may have heard of Matthew Fox. I recently took a class of his on Hildegard of Bingen and was absolutely fascinated, as Kate has heard me just chatter off her ear about in our book club too, about, oh my gosh, this is really cool. Anyway, so Matthew Fox, though, is also very aware of what is happening climate crisis wise, and where the human race is in an effort to deal with it. He's also very aware of what has taken place in the US state of Texas over this last week, but probably the last several weeks, particularly with coronavirus and lack of confronting it, managing it, helping its citizens stay healthy, that type of a thing. That might be my opinion, but that's Matthew's perspective as well as these laws that were recently passed in Texas. There are two of significance that we can kind of talk about today. One is voter rights in this country, and the way that they have changed their voter rights potentially suppresses the votes of people of color. And this is a huge issue right now in this whole entire country. The other thing that they passed was that was the strictest anti-abortion laws in this country. As of right now, the law of the land is called Roe versus Wade, and it allows for the access for women to have access to safe abortion procedures when they are needed. Texas, however, has decided that if the fetal heartbeat is heard once the fetal heartbeat is heard, you can no longer have an abortion. It doesn't matter if you've been raped. It doesn't matter if the pregnancy is the result of incest. It doesn't matter. As long as the fetal heartbeat has been detected, you are not allowed to.
And what stage is the fetal heartbeat detected?
From what I have read, and because also I'm not paying attention to the news a ton because of all the work that we're doing as well and just trying to hold space. Anyway, from what I understand, it can be as early as 6 weeks. It can be earlier. So a woman may not even be aware that she's pregnant. She may go to the doctor, have a pregnancy test, she may have an ultrasound. At that moment, she's not longer allowed to make a decision. So it's very...
What's the motivation behind this? sorry, let me
Really
take
good
all the
question.
judgment out of that.
Yeah. No, that's a
let,
fair question. If we ask,
no, I
like,
know,
what is
but
the motivation?
let me ask, let me, you know, who am I to judge? I'm just curious, really curious as to who feels so strongly about things like that, that they've amended what the rest of the world considers a fundamental right for a very long, not a very long time, but long enough for us to, in civilized society, to expect it as a right, shall I say? I guess it's never been a right, has it? It's always at the discretion of a doctor. But I would say that generally in the I was going to say the occupied world, that's not the right one. That in the what would you call us? Developed world, the decision to choose is generally accepted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
just wondering what's causing,
that's a
what brought
very
all
good
this to a
question.
head in the States.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there's a way to answer it that immediately gets judgmental and partisan. So I'm not going to answer it that way. The way that I understand as to who, to answer your question, is it has become, instead of the conversation around this medical procedure being like, even taking the word abortion has become extremely political and hot and divisive, instead of a conversation about what is in the best interest of women's health, a woman's health, access to medical care, and the health of a child longer term. In the States, it has become divisive between, they call it pro-life, meaning anti-abortion, or pro-choice, which in the simplest of terms, which is not a very simple issue, is pro-abortion. It's so, we could go on this and forever, because there's so many nuances in all of it. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna do that. So the motivation behind such a law, and to keep it as open as we can, the motivation behind the law is to protect children, unborn children, that the one side argues does not have a right.
Understood. I'm just wondering, because to me, abortion would be hopefully a very, very private thing.
Mhm.
I can't imagine. It's like I can't imagine, like, as a woman who has never had a child, I still have opinions on abortions because technically it could happen to me. A man, unless he's actually had a partner who has aborted his child, I just don't even see that they would even, you know, like what brought this up, like that's what's beyond me. It sorry,
I said politics brought it up. It became a political issue instead of a medical issue, particularly in this country. And then they ground the politics in religion, because certain people of faith tend to vote a certain way. So it's tied up between faith, religion, I'll say religion, religion and politics, and health is actually, to some degree, completely left out of the conversation.
yeah, I just have to wonder who, you know, most of us, if we take up, I'm not going to say take up arms, that's the wrong expression, but most of us, if we join some sort of movement, it's because we've been personally involved on one side or the other. This is not an issue that affects the vast majority of people, I suspect, who are making this argument one way or the other. Right. You know, they've made it their business. It's not that they've happened across it and gone, oh my God, I must right this huge injustice. It's like they've gone looking for it. That's probably very judgmental, because again, I know nothing about it. Right. It just seems to me that it's a very specific and small, I'm not saying it's a minority of people, but it's not something that the everyday person stumbles into unless you're actually in the situation.
Right. And that, I think, is, for me, that is the tragedy of it. Instead of having an understanding of, I mean, I can only imagine as a woman getting into a pregnancy situation,
an unwanted pregnancy,
on however it occurred, yeah. Right? However it occurred. And at some point, it's not in the right interest for me and or the child. And I need to be able to have access to the resources to help me through that decision process. And that is what is being denied, let alone the procedure, but even access to the conversation through the decision process. Because I don't, from what I gather and from what I can even feel like, right, I've never had a child. I have stepchildren, but I've never, and I have a grandchild through marriage. And I have nephews. I have a sister whose second child was stillborn. And all of that, I can't, knowing all of that and having that emotional in my, those emotions in here, I can't imagine going through this and then being in a situation where I can't do what's in everybody's, what I feel is in the, and it's an excruciating decision regardless of how.
Yeah, that's what gets me, is how anyone could think that somebody just trips along, goes, oh dear, I'm pregnant, I'll just have an abortion. You know, that's what I find, that's so insulting, that anybody would think that any woman makes that decision lightly, whatever the circumstances, it's going to be an awful decision to have to make.
Exactly. And herein,
and you're getting me angry now.
Well, I was just going to say, herein lies the anger, right? So you feel it, I feel it on behalf of women who, and in this,
frightened that I feel frightened that can happen in this day and age.
Well, and I need to describe the rest of from what I understand, the rest of the law. And if people have, other information that we can read up on, please feel free to share it. From what I understand is so Roe versus Wade is the law of the land, meaning women in this country have access to pregnancy termination procedures. I'm going to say it that way because I'm not going to use that word. The word is so loaded anymore. That's the law of the land. Texas has put this new law, state law, because we have state rights in this country. They put the state law into effect, and the way they can get around the Supreme Court ruling or the law of the land is that instead of a clinic or a doctor denying, there are now, so for example, if Kate is pregnant and I know in Texas that she's going to have an abortion, I go on to a website that is sponsored by the state of Texas, I believe, and I can rat you out, and then you are fined. Possibly there's some penalty that you then incur because I ratted you out. So it's citizen on citizen that's doing this, that does this behind the work, which gets under the Roe v. Wade law. The other thing that happened though is that the people from Texas brought it to the US Supreme Court to block the law, and they would not block it. So they have set a precedence now to undermine Roe v. Wade across the country. So this is potentially rather scary. So yeah, there's a lot to it. So the anger part of it for us as human beings on this planet, as I was reading Matthew Fox today, he quotes Thomas Aquinas, who was one of the mystics that we've talked about. And Matthew Fox has been talking a lot about protesting and how can we protest but honor mysticism, if you will, in that you have a difference between fear, I'm going to put over here, fear and love. And when you do things from a place of love, things are creative. You have the via creativa, which is a path to enlightenment. There's 4 anyways, but you can create different things. You can be harness things from a place of love. So I'll come back to anger in a minute, or you can harness things from a place of fear. So when you look at anger in a situation like the laws in Texas, or how we feel, and we need to help stand up, we need to do things. What Thomas Aquinas said, he praises anger in this type of realm. Nothing great happens without anger, he said. And then Matthew Fox goes on to say, anger is an energy source that we must tap into, but in appropriate ways and for the appropriate length of time and directed at the appropriate people. Anger is one of those passions that Aquinas celebrates as being the very place where virtue is born within us. So when I listen to Matthew Fox, he does a daily video where he kind of summarizes what the mystics have said what these great Christian teachers have said. He goes on to say, if we are angry with those who harm others, it is because those who are injured belong in some way to us, either by some kinship or by friendship, or at least because of the nature we share in common. Or I would even go one step further, as you and I have studied, if we're all the divine having human experiences, of course we're all connected. So of course this raises anger. So let me take a breath there. So yeah, you want to ask?
Well, I was just going to try and take that back to because we have talked about it briefly on this, but I think I was writing partly in my blog as well, how, with law of attraction, that generally I keep away from discussions like this now, because I do get upset, I do get angry, and there's really very little as an individual, generally speaking, that one can do, and getting annoyed just makes everybody unhappy. But what you said there about coming from a place of love and a place of fear, just trying to get this straight in my mind, because law of attraction says that you shouldn't push against things, in other words, being anti-abortion, etc., and that's coming from a place of fear, that putting your attention on that actually never solves anything at all, and all you're doing is exacerbating the problem. Now, okay, so the words pro-choice, although, well, yeah, I mean, that at least is couched in a positive as opposed to a negative, as in couched in, so supporting something from a place of love towards a positive outcome, that's actually consistent with law of attraction, isn't it, in terms of harnessing the law of attraction to help you, if you like. But no, so let me rephrase that. The law of attraction will help both parties, but if you're anti-abortion, focusing on anti-abortion isn't going to get you the end result that you want.
Right.
Focusing on pro-choice will, because whatever you are rooting for, if you like, whatever you're putting your attention on, what's the word, not motivates it, but it gets more powerful. So what you're saying is, if you're coming at it, or rather what Francis Aquinas,
the same Francis of Assisi and Thomas of Aquinas. Yeah.
I'm so well read.
No, this is just my little piece of pie right now. You've got your own little piece of pie and other lovely things. Go ahead.
So Thomas Aquinas is essentially saying, you're going to tell us what he's saying, but I suggest he's leading up to how you approach this is really the difference between whether you're going to succeed or not. So if you approach it from love, okay, well, good.
And I don't know if I'm doing it from his point of view. This was the reading for today. When I pull it in with A Course in Miracles that I'm working on with Marianne Williamson, when I look at things like that, and you're right, I'm glad you said all that about the words and the anti, because another example to just kind of to have is the war on drugs. This country, our country, has waged a war on drugs. So
war on terror, war on drugs.
Exactly.
I know, yeah.
You're creating
neither of which have made any progress whatsoever, ever.
I would even argue has
made it worse. Yeah.
So, which we could talk about all that too when you talk about gun proliferation into South and Central America, but that's a whole different other topic. Anyway, this is why I do, and I'm actually understanding why I enjoy learning about current affairs and foreign affairs. I'm starting to see, okay, because it's starting to come back together when you tie it with Mississippi. Anywho, so so in this particular issue, the termination of a pregnancy medical procedure, if I look at it from an anger perspective and what I just read about, we are all connected, you hurt a sister in that regard, you hurt me. You deny a sister the conversation, you deny me. So you can, that anger then it's like, okay, well, I am passionate. Like if I follow what Thomas Aquinas says, if I use that anger to create a passion, and I would then say one step further with A Course in Miracles, the passion based in love. I love all human beings. Working on that. working on that, to be quite honest. But that is the goal, to love all human beings, regardless of political persuasion, regardless of how they feel, regardless. I love all human beings because we're all the divine. So I'm angry about this particular law. So it's creating a passion because I care for all women's health care. So let me begin to find a way to have a conversation with people who may not approach it in that regard. Let's have that conversation. How can we find a way to allow women to have healthcare across the board? And I will say, there's data that shows that if there's women's healthcare available, you don't have to have the termination of a pregnancy medical procedure conversation, because there's other things already in place. And if that actually does happen, there's support and understanding and care. There is a mindset.
What do you mean you don't need it? You mean that people have access to contraception?
Yes, part of it, absolutely.
That is only one part of terminating pregnancy, though presumably is accidental pregnancy.
Right.
Okay, so what are you suggesting then? Which this is what I can't get past, which is why I probably should stay away from these conversations altogether. Is on the whole, I think I have become a lot more tolerant and understanding of other people's perspectives. I might get shot down for this, for example, but like even with terrorists, I may not agree with what they're doing, but you know, they're again, like the termination thing. I think for someone to feel that strongly about something in order to commit such atrocity for whatever, there's something going on there. This isn't some innocent person just wandering around going, oh, I know, I'll just go and blow some folks up. There's a history there that I don't understand, and a perspective there that I may not agree with, but there is clearly something else going on there.
Yeah.
What I don't get in a situation like this is, from the way you're talking about having a conversation with, is that you are actually mixing with people who, like, these are everyday run-of-the-mill people who actually, I can't get my head around that, Julie. Why it's, for one thing, it's nobody's fucking business, right? And two, I just can't imagine why a woman, B, an educated woman, would ever deny that right for another. I mean, are these people, sorry, I'm getting off track. This is why it's no good for me to.
No, this is lovely. No, this is lovely. Yeah.
But from a law of attraction position, I'm just getting really fucked off. And,
yeah,
and I'm adding to the problem, because this is why law of attraction, from my perspective, is just don't think about it, Kate. Just don't look at it, because I'm powerless to do anything about it. And all it does is make me start thinking, what do you mean there's women walking around, educated women walking around, who actually agree with this shit? I mean, I know that's loaded with judgment. I get that.
Yeah, that's good. You're the human. Yeah, that's the human being, right? So, but what I'm saying is, it's pissed you off.
Mega.
Yeah. So what I'm learning, and this is in process, everyone. So this is all like, we're sorting stuff out. We're not experts by any, we're not, if we were experts, we would be dead, because we would have finished our human experience. So you were angry about this, as am I.
As a woman who, I would say, has never had children or ever desired children or been through any of that, but I just, I would never be so dismissive of another woman's, decision. Like, even as someone who doesn't want children, I was sterilized at the age of, I think I was 25, because I absolutely did not want children, and I didn't want to be in a situation where I would have to abort a child. So for me, it was preferable to take away any choice I ever had of having a child, rather than make that mistake, because I could not imagine a decision more painful to make. And then having to, because I was married, it wouldn't be like I was getting pregnant by mistake or anything like that. Well, it would have been a mistake, but it wouldn't have been out of wedlock or any of the above. So even though I've never had a child, I understand the pull of pregnancy, and the fact that I was terrified that the minute you get pregnant, you become a mother, whether you're conscious of it or not. So at that point, to make any decision to terminate has got to be horrific, whatever the circumstances.
Exactly.
This is coming from someone who thinks they have no feelings for children whatsoever. I still knew enough to know this is no decision I ever want to make. So the arrogance of somebody else to assume that decision is ever taken lightly or abused, or, you know,
Okay, now, no, hold on. No, that's awesome. So you're right there. So you're angry. You just articulated the passion around that anger. This is lovely. Thank you. So you just
this is not
articulated.
good for law of attraction, though.
No, hold on.
Okay.
It can be. We're going to try. I'm going to try. We're okay. So you've just articulated your passion. So how can we use that passion from a creative, and this is just creative standpoint, you know, I'm sure there's way more information that's coming on this on this whole thing, but for right now, how can we use that passion from a creative perspective to potentially to add our voices, if we will, or to add our energies towards the evolution or movement forward to allow, I'll just say, to allow women to have access to healthcare, to no longer deny, which is two negatives, but to grant access to healthcare for women. How can we use our voices? I would argue right now, we are doing it right now.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? So,
well,
yeah.
So the desired end result. So, see, even that is just so fucking basic. Like, you fucking mind your own business would be my answer. That's let's get annoyed about this, right? Since you've led me down this path. This is like people object to gay. This is like people object to gay marriage. What do you fucking care? Like, why do you care? What is it to you? This is, I don't get this. Who feels they have who could be bothered to poke around in other people's lives, passing judgment?
Yeah.
Sorry. So the end result we would be looking for would be a society where all beings had access. You see, the thing is, if you call it just healthcare, you're actually, I know it sounds nice, but you're missing the point. The point is about choice. Because yes, there are lots of situations where somebody is wronged, or it's a danger to their health, or a danger to the child, or a danger to that. And I agree. But then what about the people, not even the people who get raped? What about the people who just make a mistake? Are they to be denied?
No. Well, I guess I'm still stuck on the healthcare thing. I guess the reason why I couch it in healthcare, and I'm open to another way to look at it, healthcare to me also includes education
and mental health. Yes, as well.
And mental health and
well-being. So, but maybe not even just health, like health and well-being.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, if you're a 16-year-old girl and you get pregnant and you don't want a child, I mean, fuck, I'm 50 and I don't want one. I certainly couldn't have done one at 16.
Right.
Too much responsibility. Mind you, Kat's quite demanding.
Well, you know, I have listened to Melinda Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Melissa Gates. They both have actually done a lot of work in, I hate saying third world countries, but like less economically progressive. I don't know how to say it, but you know what I mean. Countries that don't have a lot of money, developing, don't have a lot. I hate saying these phrases because we're all humans, right? And all these economic situations are human created. So whatever, it's illusion anyway, but we don't need to go there. When there is education on when a woman has access to education that can help her make decisions on what she needs to do to take care of her whole being, healthcare, mental health, everything, spirituality, all of it, the world becomes a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So when I think, so maybe that's the passion, which is what we're trying to do with this whole sharing of our human experience, you know, making light to human being. We're sharing our experiences, we're sharing and I'm just saying in this particular episode, possibly it's this anger around this stuff, pregnancy termination, finding the passion, and then we are using this as a way to have a conversation and share this. And whoever the people that hear it are meant to hear it, find it, and possibly share it. It's, I think, and when I go back to the fear and love thing, the fear of love, I hope that this allows people to find a way to love, to make decisions based on love, to love one another, that to allow for education, allow for women to have access to menstrual pads or products. Like some countries, girls don't have access to this. How can we better embrace and support and help the female human in all that it happens in this world? Support them instead of fear-based and deny. That to me becomes the question. When we understand the anger, create the passion around it, spread the message, but make sure that we're spreading a message as we are today in this, our creative aspect.
Well, mine wasn't based in love, let's be honest.
Say what?
Mine wasn't based in love, let's be honest.
I absolutely disagree with that, Kate. I do believe you're angry because just as Matthew Fox had said, as I read, you're angry because you see other women hurt. Mm-hmm. I can see how the people on the other side of this conversation would say, well, I see unborn children hurt. Fair. So how can we bring you into a larger conversation to support unborn children instead of deny and shut down and potentially hurt women who are currently alive? How can we do this so that everybody wins? There is a way. There are ways, I should say. It's not just one. There are ways to support all for the greater and higher good instead of fear-based denial. That's ultimately
because, but you know, from a perspective of from the other side, shall we say, mm-hmm. If you're protecting the rights of the unborn child, I don't see how, you know, it is pretty much that or that. I don't see how you can do both.
Well, I shall put this forth. So if you were to support the unborn child through the pregnancy, then there would be education, healthcare, support for the woman. You would first help her along with okay, it's going to be safe for you to do this. If it's unsafe for you, I don't want to make it a decision tree, but if it's unsafe for the woman, that's a conversation that's between the woman and her doctor. If it's not safe for the unborn child, fetus, or the mother, then, you know, it's a medical procedure. If it's safe and the woman has access to support, it's still ultimately, to me, a decision between a woman and her doctor, a woman and her spirit, and a woman and whatever. It's still a decision. It's not necessarily a governmental thing. So, however, if it's safe for the female to carry the pregnancy to term, but the female is not in a place to care for that child, then the support for the care for the child is right underneath the child and allows it to be cared for, which would mean social services in place to be able to provide good health care for the child, and not a foster care system that in this country can actually put children into harm's way. It would be adoption. There are so many couples, particularly in this country, who want a child, but adoption is expensive and it is hard to do, especially if you are of same-sex marriage. There could be states, I am uncertain of this, so there could be states where it's still not easy, if even allowed, for a same-sex couple to have a child, to adopt a child. So there are things that could be done if you look at caring for human beings as a whole, and look where those denial points are those I would say fear-based denial points are, and what can we do as a loving society to take them down? So I can also hear the argument being, well, there's money involved, and oh, you're bleeding heart and all these things. All
Money
money
involved.
stuff is man-made, but
I don't think money should ever be a consideration.
I don't either, because the only thing is love, ultimately, as divine.
Because there's always money if you need it.
Exactly. I mean, look at how much money we make versus what our ancestors made 100 years ago. That's all. I would argue that's all law of attraction, that we've built it up this much. We can, if the foundation is care for all, the money will come. If the foundation is no, the money will disappear. Right? Simple law of attraction. But that's how I think.
Just out of curiosity.
Yep.
Can someone who lives in Texas go over the border and have an abortion?
If someone in Texas has the economic ability to be able to do so, yeah. I think they may, I don't know, someone will have to call me out on this one. They may still get reported, but they cannot be stopped from going over.
But if it requires somebody to actually report you, so you can still go to your doctor and get an abortion, it's just someone can tell on you.
Can tell on me, can tell on the doctor, can tell on the nurses involved.
All right, okay, so doctors aren't allowed to do it.
Well, under the law, everybody's technically allowed. You're just going to get busted by your fellow citizen and then fined accordingly, which is what makes it even more insidious to me. Feels not sadism, but that's me.
I just can't see why. I just can't even see why this would come up in this. Just people don't have better things to do.
It feels so like, with all the shifts
backward.
Yeah, exactly. With all the shifts forward that you and I particularly have experienced over the last several years of our study, this feels saddeningly backwards. Yeah,
and especially like when you talk, just the sort of changes that have occurred across the world about acceptance of gender and sexuality and all these things, and you think, we sort of laugh a little bit about it, when things were much more simple when we were young, but I acknowledge that no, maybe they weren't. It's just I'm lucky enough I didn't ever go through anything like that. But there's so much more acceptance. I appreciate there is still a lot more that can happen, but this feels like dropping back into the dark ages.
Right. I know. And it's, when humans are faced with a dire situation, just like any animal, we will do what we need to do to survive. So if I were a female in Texas who did not have the economic capability or educational wherewithal to terminate my pregnancy for whatever reason I felt I needed to for my own health and sanity, I would have to revert to means that would further endanger my health, whether it means I carry out the pregnancy or I terminate it somehow. That to me, just that hurts me as Julie Hirt, as human being on this planet.
I agree.
Yeah,
and I find it abhorrent.
Yeah.
That any sane, educated person, never mind female, would ever think that was an okay thing to do.
Yeah. And we chose to be on this planet at this time for these reasons. This whole shifting of the, not necessarily, I will say possibly for you, not necessarily to work on the Texas laws, but our combined energy, this conversation adds to that place of growth and evolution for the greatest and highest good, because we're creating this conversation based on anger and a passion that we have. And in that, we have done some work. There are other things we can do. There are things I may do. I might write a letter. We'll see. But I'm just, but even that is.
I'll take comfort in that, because I maybe we should discuss this further. But I suppose I feel now that even just me getting annoyed and irritated is adding power to the other side. So you know what I mean? That's what I
Yeah.
worry about.
Yeah, see, and that's how I was. So I read this morning and I was like, oh, because I've been trying to understand, well, I can't, if I'm angry, that's negative and it's bad. And what do I do with it? But our wonderful teacher, Danielle McKinnon, has said to me, you know, in particular, you have to see the anger, you have to bring it to the light, you have to allow it to be whatever, and dissipate or send it up, whatever you need to do with it. Because if you don't, you get sick. I mean, yeah, okay, so even in that sentence, if you think of how angry everybody is around this particular issue, if we don't resolve it for the greater and higher good, it's going to continue to make us sick, which I would argue is where we are, right?
Yeah.
So, but okay, so but then I'm also thinking, well, okay, well, I am becoming more and more spiritual because I'm very interested in these mystics, and even in Jewish mysticism. A lot of this is based in Jewish mysticism too. Anyway. So, but now today I get this, it's like the guides goes, okay, and here's the next step in dealing with your anger. I'm like, I read that, I went, oh my God, this is amazing. And I thought, oh, let's just share it. But now I just feel like you and I have even worked through it together a little bit more, that I feel like for me personally, I'm like, oh, see, just by creating this, I hadn't even thought about using our conversation as a via creativa path to enlightenment around this issue, which was anger to passion to creativity to something. So I just feel, yeah, so I would argue that I would suggest that when you feel annoyed, look for your anger, find what you're passionate about. I would just chant, just I think what I will do is just make sure the passion is based from a place of love and not a base of denial or fear or repression or whatever. And then how can I take that and create something, whether it's a sign that says, hey, I love everybody, or whatever, Black Lives Matter. I don't know, just whatever it may be, something based in love. That's my thought.
And on that note, you should ask everybody to share this conversation as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yes, please. Yes, please. And if you're interested in joining us for a conversation, I'd say we would be open to that. Like, however we can creatively share this passion.
See, now I get scared because now you're wandering into like hate mail territory, are we? I don't know. No.
It's possible. And just like our friend Matt Kahn says,
yeah, whatever, if you've got something to say, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to say it. I appreciate your energy.
Love
totally
that.
True. And I feel that way, absolutely, because I'm sure people are going to say stuff. That's fine. But let's talk about it, because all we're hoping for is that human beings have access to education, healthcare, support, love, whatever other good positive things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It's all scary to put it out there, but at the same time, I was so inspired today because I'm like, oh.
Well, you see, because normally, as I say, I just try and keep away from these conversations just because it's not even that it's not spiritual or anything like that. It is the fact that I can't talk. I find it very difficult to talk about stuff like this without getting emotionally involved. Because
yeah, and that's okay though too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah. And there was a time when I would have loved to sit and rant about stuff like that, but it's whether it's helpful or not. I think it's fine to do that, but to be constantly looking and picking on, well, that makes you just as bad as everybody else, and doesn't it? All these people who are fighting against it, to be constantly looking for things to criticize and to get angry about and to have an opinion on. And I used to be one of those people. So the opinions are still there. I just leave them alone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yes, there's so much more we could say just about this particular issue, but
I'm writing something in my blog about it, but
yeah, I know there's so many issues we could even dissect. I would even say racism is another one that's very important to me. White people talking about racism, because we have to figure this shit out first. Sorry to swear. Before, we have to figure it out before we start going to, people of color going, help me figure this out. It's not their problem. We're the ones that created it. So let's figure it out. People, I have been so afraid to talk about so many of these things, but they need to be talked about. But I feel like I'm starting, I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I don't know. Anyway,
my God, now you're scaring me, Julie. Right, good. Let's go for it.
Right on. So that was our sticky, exciting, intriguing, thought-provoking conversation around what's happening, particularly in the United States, in the state of Texas, around some new laws that have come into being about terminations of pregnancy, as well as how it's couched in Thomas of Aquinas' teaching. So lots of stuff in here, so much to think about and go forward with, and we'll see how it unravels, evolves, whatever, as we go forward with making light to humans being, which is what we are. I'm Julie Heert. With me, as always, is Kate Foggo. Thank you, Kate, for working through this with me too. It was so much fun. I think I need to take a nap anyway, but we will see you next time on our show. Please subscribe so that others can find us. Please share your comments, your thoughts, any other additional information you have to share. If you want to come and join us and talk about this too, that would be great. But you can follow us here on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We are making light to humans being. See you next time. Thank you.